Big Sam on the brink. Tonight, the England manager is clinging to his job after allegations he abused his position.
I would have thought £100,000 a time.
Your guys set the agenda out of what it would look like.
He was secretly filmed discussing a deal that could have made him hundreds of thousands of pounds on top of his £3 million salary.
Also tonight, a £5 million fine for Alton Towers after the roller coaster crash.
Well, Donald, I know you live in your own reality.
I also have a much better temperament than she has.
Woo, okay.
It's Clinton on points in the head-to-head with Trump, but no knockout blows in the debates.
And the stars come out for Terry, the day they honoured a broadcasting legend.
This is the ITV Evening News with Mary Nightingale and Mark Austin.
Good evening. The England manager Sam Allardyce is facing the prospect of the sack tonight after he was exposed for allegedly breaching FA rules. Allardyce was caught in an undercover newspaper sting, giving advice on how to get around regulations on player transfers.
FA bosses have been holding an emergency meeting at Wembley and are said to be extremely concerned by the revelations. In the videos, Allardyce, who's only been in the job for 2 months, also criticises his predecessor, Roy Hodgson, England players, and even mocks Princes William and Harry. Our sports editor Steve Scott has the latest.
Heading for a showdown with the boss, Sam Allardyce, on his way to Wembley in an attempt to save the dream job he's held for just 2 months. The England manager was filmed by undercover journalists posing as businessmen, apparently using his new position to seal a £400,000 deal.
I would have thought £100,000 a time.
Your guys set the agenda out of what it would look like. Me flying out on whatever day, landing in Hong Kong or Singapore.
During their meetings, he even mocked his predecessor, Roy Hodgson.
Send them all
yeah,
to
well,
sleep.
quite, yeah.
Send them all to sleep, Roy.
But more damaging for Allardyce, his views on bending transfer rules laid down by his new employers, involving the complicated and banned practice of third-party ownership.
Third-party ownership problem.
It's not a problem now.
Yeah, well, I mean, there are ways around that, as I understand it, or ways through that.
According to one high-profile MP, if true, that alone made Allardyce's position all but untenable.
That practice was called effectively a form of modern-day slavery by the World Footballers Union, and for the allegation that the England manager is advising people on how to get around those rules is incredibly serious.
Still, the most difficult question to answer is why a man on reportedly £3 million, who's just landed the job he's craved for many years, would risk it all entertaining deals with people he barely knew. Whatever the answer, the reality is Allardyce's judgment has been found wanting.
OK, Steve, so the big question is, can he survive this?
Mary, I think it's going to be very difficult for him indeed. In a way, there's no smoking gun as such, and the FA could justify either backing him or sacking him. But I think really it's so difficult when you've got a man who you employ who's negotiating deals with people he barely knows outside his contract, when he's suggesting it seems there are ways round a transfer deal that is against FA policy. It's going to be tough. I understand the meeting today at Wembley, or during it at least, there was a lot of straight talking. We've spoken to a few friends of Sam Allardyce today. After that meeting, they say that he feels devastated. He's absolutely gutted by what has happened. Another said that it's the worst 24 hours of his entire professional life. Now, the Daily Telegraph, who orchestrated this sting, say there are going to be more revelations tomorrow. Obviously, we don't know yet what they're going to be. The FA don't know yet, so maybe it is they're just waiting to see what comes out overnight. I know that Sam Allardyce is staying in London. It may be the FA wants to speak to him and the rest of us again tomorrow.
OK, Steve, thank you.
The owner of Alton Towers was fined £5 million today for the Smiler roller coaster crash, which left 5 people with life-changing injuries. Outside court, the company said it was very sorry for letting people down with such devastating consequences. One victim, though, said no amount of money could repair the damage to their lives. It's believed to be a record fine for the industry. Ben Chapman reports.
Like many thousands of young people, the judge said, they went to a theme park to enjoy the illusion of danger. But never should they have been exposed to the real risk of a needless accident they were fortunate to have survived.
The court have imposed what we believe is a record fine for the industry. But of course, money alone will never replace limbs nor heal these psychological scars.
He said those who were injured that day were shocked and disappointed at the catalogue of errors that led up to the crash on a ride that had been unsafe since it opened. The judge described the safety procedures in place at Alton Towers that day as a shambles. The crash, he said, was an entirely foreseeable, catastrophic failure. It was made worse by the pain and distress caused by delays in arranging access for emergency services. Changes have been made, but he said the fine should have a real financial impact. The owner, Merlin, says the crash has already cost it a £14 million drop in revenue. But last year, the company's pre-tax profits rose to £250 million. Today's fine of £5 million represents just 2% of its annual profit. Its chief executive stands to earn over £1 million in bonuses over the next 2 years, but today he apologised.
The far bigger punishment for all of us is the knowledge that on this occasion we let people down with such devastating consequences.
One of them was Chanda Chauhan, who suffered internal injuries. She said today's fine makes little difference to her.
Justice has to be done, but for us, we're still sort of struggling on a day-to-day basis. This is really irrelevant to our own problems.
But the judge said today was not about putting a price on the injuries suffered by the victims, whose futures have been irreversibly changed. Ben Chapman, ITV News, Stafford Crown Court.
Hillary Clinton and Donald Trump took the gloves off in the first US presidential TV debate last night. Trump questioned her stamina and said she'd been invisible on the campaign trail.
Clinton accused him of insulting women, not supporting African Americans and not paying his taxes. Our Washington correspondent Robert Moore reports on the candidates trading blows in the first debate.
They both take pride in being tough and resilient, but this was a uniquely unforgiving environment. 90 minutes on stage, with 100 million Americans tuning in. It started with a gesture of rare respect.
Now, in all fairness to Secretary Clinton, yes, is that okay? Good. I want you to be very happy. It's very important to me.
But then began the attacks.
Well, Donald, I know you live in your own reality.
I also have a much better temperament than she has.
Woo, okay.
Mrs. Clinton accusing Donald Trump of everything, from cheating his workers to lying about his wealth.
To the thousands of people that you have stiffed over the course of your business not deserve some kind of apology?
And she raised some of his more outrageous comments.
But this is a man who has called women pigs, slobs, and dogs.
The argument raged also over whether he had backed the war in Iraq.
Donald supported the invasion of Iraq.
Wrong.
That is absolutely
wrong.
Proved over and over again.
Trump fired back, saying Mrs. Clinton had committed a crime when her email server was wiped.
I think it's disgraceful. And believe me, this country thinks it's disgraceful. It really thinks it's disgraceful also.
I have a feeling that by the end of this evening, I'm going to be blamed for everything that's ever happened.
Why not?
Why not? Yeah, why not? Just join the debate by saying more crazy things.
Towards the end, Hillary Clinton was on something of a roll, with Donald Trump's discredited conspiracy theory about Obama's birth certificate in the line of fire.
He has really started his political activity based on this racist lie that our first black president was not an American citizen.
The moderator brought up a previous Trump description of his opponent.
Earlier this month, you said she doesn't have, quote, a presidential look.
She doesn't have the look. She doesn't have the stamina. I said she doesn't have the stamina.
And Mrs. Clinton then responded to the criticism that in recent days she has barely been visible on the campaign trail.
I think Donald just criticized me for preparing for this debate. And yes, I did. And you know what else I prepared for? I prepared to be president. And I think that's a good thing.
Across America, in living rooms, bars and halls, voters were watching and reacting.
They may as well just give him a shovel and say, start digging now. His PR people must be ripping their hair out by the roots.
In fact, Trump was doing his own PR with us in the post-debate spin room.
Do you feel you were dealt a fair hand in that debate?
Yeah, I think it was a very fair debate.
But the narrative has taken firm hold. This was a big setback for Trump.
Do you concede that wasn't your finest hour?
I thought it was great. No, I think we did great. Every poll has me winning.
Both campaigns will now take stock and recalibrate, with 42 days and 2 more debates left before Election Day.
There's a very broad consensus here that Hillary Clinton won last night and won pretty big. In fact, some Trump advisors last night conceded that much to me. And this morning, some of Trump's camp are blaming the microphone. Others are blaming the moderator, Rudy Giuliani, even suggesting it would be a reasonable strategy now for Donald Trump not even to turn up to the final 2 presidential debates. I think the best hope for the Republicans is this debate played somewhat differently in the heartland, where, of course, this election will be won and where it'll be fought for the next 6 weeks.
OK, Robert Moore in New York. Thank you.
Here, Sir Cliff Richard says he's pleased by the Crown Prosecution Service's decision to take no further action against him over alleged sex offences. The decision in June not to prosecute the 75-year-old singer had been appealed, but a full review of the evidence concluded the decision was correct. Sir Cliff says he hopes this brings matters to a close.
A 78-year-old man has been arrested on suspicion of the murder of a schoolgirl in West Yorkshire more than 50 years ago. 14-year-old Elsie Frost was fatally stabbed in 1965.
And police searching for the missing toddler Ben Needham on the Greek island of Kos have found pieces of fabric on land close to where he was last seen. The forensic team says the small pieces of fabric were of slight interest.
Here, the Labour leader Jeremy Corbyn has told ITV News that his party needs to come together if it wants to return to power. The question of unity has dominated the party's conference in Liverpool, and today London Mayor Sadiq Khan called for policies to make Labour electable. Mr Corbyn brushed off a suggestion that was aimed at him. From Liverpool, here's our political editor, Robert Peston.
You put that at the end of the instrument.
Never too old to learn new skills. Like how to unite a warring Labour Party.
In harmony. That wasn't much in harmony. One more time.
Labour's London Mayor Sadiq Khan, not a Corbyn fan.
Do you think Labour's got a winning leader? You said it was on the verge of extinction at the weekend.
Prime Minister.
Good to see you all. Enjoy the speech.
It's only when Labour is in power that we get the chance to fix the problems that we care most about. Of course, conference. Labour is not in power in the place we can have the biggest impact in our country, in Parliament.
Labour can do nothing, Sadiq Khan said, unless it's in power. It was basically a lecture to you that your policies aren't going to get Labour into power, wasn't it?
How was that a lecture to me? It was a lecture to everybody that we have to come together to get in power.
But many Labour MPs fear Corbyn is not reaching out beyond the party's dedicated supporters, and that would mean power is a very remote prospect.
How can you produce policies that appeal to disillusioned Tories? Because without them, you won't get into power.
There's a lot of people that voted Conservative in the last election and probably in previous elections who are very concerned about the housing crisis in Britain because their children can't afford to buy anywhere, can't get any council places and spend so much on private rented they can't save for a deposit.
And what about that elusive party unity, which means giving MPs a say in who sits on the front bench?
Would you personally like to see MPs with votes for the shadow cabinet?
I didn't vote for it. I am open to the idea of it. I understand the argument behind it, but I also think the leader of the party must have the opportunity to form the general policy areas.
And what about the contentious question of replacing Britain's nuclear weapons?
We had a free vote in Parliament. That is the existing party policy. I cannot predict what will happen in the future, who will decide what they want to bring forward to conference.
Doesn't sound as though it is settled for you.
Back at conference, Corbyn's deputy didn't spot the promised outbreak of peace and love.
In the past, Jeremy, I don't think she got the unity memo.
The brothers embracing, but for how long? Robert Peston, ITV News in Liverpool.
Right, still to come on the ITV Evening News tonight. 3 people and a baby. The first child is born from a revolutionary new DNA technique.
And the stars were out at Westminster Abbey for a service of celebration for the life of the late Sir Terry Wogan. Those stories and more after the break.
Welcome back. The world's first baby, created with DNA from 3 people, has been born in Mexico. The boy's mother carries genes for a fatal disorder that killed 2 of her other children. And to avoid that gene, a 3rd parent was used. The controversial technique means that baby avoids the condition. It could, however, now be used in the UK, as our science correspondent Allardyce explains.
This is the world's first baby to be born with DNA from 3 people. His mother carries faulty mitochondria, which led to a fatal disorder of the nervous system in 2 of her previous children. To prevent history repeating itself, she turned to scientists in New York City to use a cutting-edge technique on humans for the very first time. The technique involves taking the nuclear DNA from an egg that has faulty mitochondria and inserting that DNA into a donor egg that has healthy mitochondria and which has first had its own nuclear DNA removed. Mitochondrial diseases affect 1 in 5,000 people. Until recently, they've traditionally been beyond medical treatment. Earlier this year, scientists at Newcastle University perfected their method for mitochondrial DNA transfer in the laboratory. That method is now pending approval from the UK's fertility regulators before it can be used in patients in the NHS. The New York team didn't have permission to carry out their technique in the United States, so they went to Mexico, where there are no rules.
I've got really mixed feelings about this news today. Part of me is really excited and delighted that a baby has been born which seems to be free of mitochondrial disease, but part of me is cautious. I don't know enough information for me to be 100% certain that everything is as I would like it to be really celebrating.
That lack of detail will raise many ethical and technical questions. Even so, this technique has now been proved in people, a firm step into a new world of genetic therapy. Alok Jha, ITV News.
The first shipment of controversial US shale gas has arrived here in the UK. The delivery reached a refinery in Grangemouth this afternoon. The gas is produced by fracking, which is currently suspended in Scotland while ministers consider the evidence.
And the Duke and Duchess of Cambridge visited the Great Bear Rainforest on the 3rd day of their tour of Canada. Despite the wet weather, the royal couple used the visit to promote conservation. They were welcomed with a dance by the children of the local First Nation community. And finally, the velvety voice of the late Sir Terry Wogan filled Westminster Abbey today at a touching and emotional Thanksgiving service. It was attended by the Irishman's many celebrity friends, family and fans, and it also marked the 50th anniversary of his very first BBC radio broadcast.
Among those paying tribute was the current Radio 2 presenter, Chris Evans, who said Sir Terry will always be the best. Nina Nana was there too.
That's really hard enough to work under these conditions.
That famous laughter echoed around the Abbey, the sound that for decades had warmed a nation of listeners. There were smiles too. They played the theme to the Eurovision Song Contest, the programme Terry Wogan had made his own, and plenty of emotion. His colleague Chris Evans overcome as he paid tribute.
Terry Wogan wasn't the best. He is the best, and he will always be the best.
Listen, lads, don't panic, don't panic. Look.
Here's your host on Terry Wogan.
He said his style on radio and TV was to make it up as I go along. He might, said his colleagues today, find the service and tributes bemusing.
He'd find it very funny.
Would he?
He'd find it very amusing, yeah. He's just the best. People loved him. He's probably the best broadcaster of my lifetime and just one of the nicest men I ever met. And so silly.
Got a dry eye. We miss him. Lovely man. But, the bells are ringing for him. It's all right.
This is the closest thing to crazy I have ever.
Terry Wogan championed Katie Melua. She played for him today, while Joanna Lumley paid tribute in poetry.
A brainy burbling, charming us to shreds, when we should long have risen from our beds.
And watching it all with the Togs, Terry's old geezers and gals, his devoted fans. Is there a Tog life after Terry?
Yes, because the friendships that have been built.
Friendships aren't going to disappear overnight. No. And because we are a like-minded bunch of people, we will carry on getting together.
Nina Nana, ITV News at Westminster Abbey.
Remembering Terry Wogan. A reminder of our main story tonight. The England manager Sam Allardyce is facing the prospect of the sack tonight.
Secretly filmed conversations appear to show the recently appointed manager making damaging comments to undercover reporters.
And that's it for now. Tom Bradby's here with news at 10.
But from all the team here, have a very good evening. Bye-bye.